Hello, and welcome to Productivity and Prose, a podcast about making the most of your writing time and honing your craft. Whether you're a seasoned author or a new writer, this podcast offers helpful tips to maximize your writing time, increase your writing productivity, and tackle the sometimes tough aspects of the writer life. I'm your host, Emilie, author of Suspended in the Stars, among other things, and today I'd like to introduce myself in this new podcast. I've had Productivity and Prose in the back of my mind for over a year now, but I wasn't sure if I should make the leap to start this year. As you'll soon see, I've got a lot on my plate, maybe too much, and adding this podcast was a bit of a gamble. But here's the thing about me. If I'm passionate about something, I'll make time for it, and I'm passionate about writing. But I guess I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here. As I said, my name is Emilie, and I live in Indiana with my husband, our two dogs, Bounce and Georgia, and our chatty cat, Pages, who really runs the house. We moved here from California a little over 2 years ago and have really loved integrating into the Midwest. My husband is originally from Michigan, but this is a big change for me, a born and raised Californian. I'm fully self-employed, have been for many years now, and operate under my umbrella business name of EAH Creative. I run a shop called Create, Explore, Read, where I sell bookish items for explorers of pages and places. I co-host the Exploring the Blank Page podcast with my friend and YA author, Kristen Crum, a YA-focused podcast where we interview authors about how they approach the blank page. And I write and design book covers for a living. Yeah, it's a dream job for sure. But it wasn't always that way. I spent years writing for others as a ghostwriter, going so far as to write 1 million words in 1 year. But I've since been able to step back from that, and I'm able to write for myself now. While my name is Emilie, I actually write under several different pen names. I'll go into more detail about that in another episode because I get a lot of questions about using pen names. But for now, I'll detail what I write here. I started my publishing journey writing sweet romance under the pen name Belle Renshaw. I independently published my first book in 2016. It was called One Christmas in Winter, and it's a Hallmark type of romance set in a fictional town of Winter, Montana. It's now a complete series of 5 books, and I've added several other novellas and novels under this pen name. For Belle, you can expect sweet romance and rom-com. My legal name is Emilie Haney, and under that, I write Christian and sweet romantic suspense and cozy mystery. My debut romantic suspense, Expired Promise, released in 2023 with Sunrise Publishing, and I've written 2 cozy mysteries with Annie's Fiction. The first is releasing this year, I think. At the beginning, I mentioned my book Suspended in the Stars, which is my most recent release. That's written under the pen name E.A. Hendricks, and it's a YA science fantasy that I call The Greatest Showman Meets Star Wars. This book started on Kickstarter and released wide on November 7th, 2023. It's the first in a planned trilogy. Under the E.A. Hendricks pen name, you can expect to find young adult and new adult books in the sci-fi and fantasy realm, and there might be some contemporary someday. Wink, wink. Whew, I realize that's a lot, but I think it may help you understand and perhaps trust me a little more on this podcast. To some, perhaps most, I might be a new name to you, but I'm no stranger to writing. While my ghostwriting was all under non-disclosure agreements, I can tell you that one of the clients I wrote for went on to be a US and internationally best-selling author with thousands of good reviews on the books I wrote for them. I don't say that to toot my own horn, but to give you some perspective. I'm no stranger to writing, but also to writing fast. Remember those 1 million words I talked about? A lot of that writing was done in large chunks, usually 6,000 to 8,000 words in a day. And it needed to be turned in as cleanly as possible. During that time, I learned not only what a good story entails, but to be extremely productive with the time I had. Now hear this, I am by no means an expert. There are other amazing podcasts and resources out there for organization and specific productivity tips. But this podcast will focus on the writer. We face unique challenges that go beyond being organized. As with any creative job, inspiration ebbs and flows, and we have to learn to deal with that in order to meet deadlines, manage our time, and act as a professional writer. That's true even if you're not published yet. One last thing about me is that I also love being active on Instagram. Yes, it can totally be a time suck, something we'll talk about in future episodes, but it is something I love and has helped not only my writing, but also creating and cultivating community. Another thing I'm big on. If you're interested in connecting with me, go check out my page at Create, Explore, Read. So there you have it, a bit of background on me. I've been a professional writer since 2011, and in that time, I've written over 30 novels. Not all of them published, of course. I've been published as a ghostwriter, signed with an agent, independently published, traditionally published, and run a successful Kickstarter. I've had writing be my sole focus, but most of the time I've been forced to run other businesses like professional photography and design in order to make ends meet. Through those 13 years, I have learned so much about what it takes to be productive, but also what it's like to work in a creative industry like publishing. I can't wait to share more about my experiences as well as insights into how you too can be a productive writer. In the next episode, I'll be talking about planning out your writing year and my 5 tips to make that process as smooth as possible. Thanks so much for listening, and don't forget to dream big and write boldly. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe and leave a rating and review. If you're looking for more writing inspiration, community, craft tips, and behind-the-scenes content, consider joining the EAH Coalition on Patreon with various levels of free and paid support. You can also connect with me on Instagram at CreateExploreRead and find out more about me, my books, and my design business on my website, eahcreative.com. Productivity and Prose is an EAH Creative production.